Alright, so this video is unique. I'm going for a night drive. I normally only do this when I'm reviewing bulbs, but there's a good reason why I'm doing it today. Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Shayness. Before we dive into the details of the bypass mode for the DVX valve, let's just jump straight into what you guys mostly want to see, and that is sound clips. So roll the footage. So first and foremost, the mic is set up facing that way, so if you can't hear me too well, I apologize. I have it set up that way because right now the main reason why we're doing this at night is that the DVX valve is actually set up in recirculate or bypass mode, which means that there is no atmospheric vent, there's no blowing off, so it's actually very, very, very quiet, and I wanted to record it in a setting where there's not a lot of ambient sound. So what best time to do that than at nighttime when there's no other traffic. So hopefully you guys can see, or technically hear, what it sounds like when it's in bypass mode. And I'll just give you guys my impression after driving weeks and weeks with this setting, my overall experience. So let's get straight into that. All right, so we're at a stoplight. I'm rolling up the windows just so you guys can hear, because again, like I said, it's really, really quiet. So this is kind of a long stretch, two-lane road, well, 4 lanes, that I'm gonna just do a normal pull on, so you guys can hopefully hear what it sounds like recirculating. It'll probably be like a second gear pull, so just heads up, we're waiting for it to go green. So hopefully you were kind of able to hear it. Again, like I said, it's extremely quiet. It's just like a slight release of air, and again, because it's recirculating, it goes back into the system, so it's like super light. I'll try to see if I can do one last pull passing this green light. We'll just rev match real quick by downshifting, and this is green, still green. Just for good measure, I'm slowing down. I'm gonna put it in neutral and just kind of rev towards the red light so you guys can hear what it sounds like without a load. But here it comes. So again, super quiet. You're probably gonna hear the engine more. You're probably gonna hear the exhaust a lot more. But yeah. I have the windows down, so there shouldn't be a lot of air coming in, but I'm just gonna show you guys what it sounds like, just like going like kind of slight throttle up my like driveway up here. But listen, yeah, again, it's super duper quiet. All right guys, so I know that was probably a little difficult to hear. Again, I just can't stress enough that this is very quiet when you have it in a recirculative fashion. But speaking of recirculation, let's break down a little bit of what that means and what this particular mode does as opposed to a blow-off valve. So let's roll that take. So in vented atmosphere, like a blow-off valve does, essentially any excess air after you let off the throttle, or essentially the throttle body closes, will vent to the atmosphere and make that really nice psh sound, right? Or if you guys opted for something like the HCAS, you'll get that nice little whistle sound. In recirculate mode or in bypass mode, essentially that air gets redirected back into the system instead of going out to the atmosphere, which explains why you guys didn't really hear much in the video as far as the sound that the valve makes, because what ends up happening is that air gets redirected to this hose right here, and it goes back into the system like so, and back to the turbo to help re-spool it up. Now, because of modern turbo technology, it doesn't always mean it's a huge benefit to recirculate. Now, that's obviously a big argument. Some people will state that it does help in certain situations to have your spool ready to go, while others will say that it's such a negligible amount that you'll never notice it. And I would honestly lean towards that, in that you won't really notice it. However, For those of you guys having to deal with aftermarket modding legalities, or for those of you guys that want to do a sleeper build, this valve in the bypass mode is perfect for just that. So one thing that I do want to note is that I will be making a lot of comparisons as to the previous blow-off valve that I had, which, if you've been following me, was the Turbo XS hybrid valve. Only reason being is because I went originally from the stock bypass valve to that Turbo XS blow-off valve, now to the Go Fast Bits diverter valve. And so there's a lot of things there that I want to address. First and foremost, I do believe that towards the later half of owning that valve, I want to say that I believe things were going a little awry, to the point where, again, just personal bad luck is probably getting defective. But as far as what this valve is, its own product, it's amazing. For those of you guys that want to know what it sounds like and what it feels like, what it was like in the full atmospheric vent configuration, I would highly suggest going to see my previous video that I did on that. This one is going to purely touch base on how it works in the bypass mode, which is basically recirculating. One obvious note is the fact that it was extremely quiet, so much so that you really can't hear it. You honestly just had to have like everything off just to be able to hear the actual actuation of the valve, and obviously it ejecting the excess air back into the system. This particular product is just high quality. You guys saw it. It's extremely sturdy. It's just tough. Even the vacuum line that goes to the top is just a lot larger than it is on many other competitor valves. And the comparison is honestly all the other valves that bolt onto the stock configuration, which is underneath that front bumper shroud. So there's not much. There is the Turbo XS hybrid valve, and then there's two others very similar to it, the Forge Motorsports valve, the Boomba valve, and one really interesting competitor, the Turbo Smart Compact, only because they're the only other valve that essentially has both functionalities of being able to fully atmospheric vent, aka be a blow-off valve, or recirculate and be a bypass valve. The other cool thing is Turbo Smart actually makes two other models where it's just either 100% blow-off valve without any adjustment and 100% a recirculating bypass valve, again without any adjustments. So, you know, they have that middle product where you can get the best of both worlds, much like this. And really, this is the only other valve. I know that the other competitors like Synops, Greddy, and HKS, while they're great quality, and I've actually owned an HKS valve before on a different vehicle, and a lot of them will advertise that you can kind of reconfigure to do a bypass. From personal experience, they don't always do what they state they do. They're not always as universal as you'd like them to be, because they are honestly built to be blow-off valves. So the one thing I could appreciate about this is the multitude of the application, because again, I've already reviewed it as a blow-off valve, and as a bypass valve it works amazingly well. Just the same, holds boost all the way through the power band, and doesn't create any kind of issues like turbo flutter or anything like that. On top of that, I mean, if you want it to be hybrid, you can adjust it. You can set the setting to the middle portion and have, you know, a mix of both, which would be obviously comparable to the Turbo XS valve. So again, there's just a lot of room for adaptability, even down to the point where this particular valve allows you to adjust it, as you guys saw, without having to go buy a different spring setting or disassembling thing like some of the other products that I just mentioned. So in that respect, it's a total win. Again, for those of you guys that are trying to go sleeper status, you couldn't ask for a better product because it's so compact. You don't have to cut a hole in your shroud of the bumper. It sits perfectly flush down there, and obviously in the bypass configuration, it's insanely quiet. It just performs the way you would expect it to. It holds boost, like I just mentioned, incredibly well. I have honestly no complaints about it. And it's not just the feeling of it, because it's also tangible gains. There's numbers behind it that you can honestly see. I have always complained about gas mileage with this car, and I always saw that some people claim that they had really good gas mileage, and my biggest factor was, oh, it's probably because they have a dual clutch transmission, you know, 7 speeds, and obviously that eco mode will contribute to a lot. And I will still hold my ground on that. I do believe that the majority of people that have insanely good gas mileage probably have a DCT model. However, I was getting previously with the Turbo XS model about 20 to 22 on average, and that's a mix of city and highway. Now, depending on my driving habits, I get between 25 and 28. 25 if I'm driving very spiritedly, the whole, tank that I have, and 28 if I'm being just more normal slash conservative. So again, I'm not just making this fluff up, but take note that I do have a manual transmission model. I do have a friend who recently installed the exact same product on their dual clutch transmission model, and they actually saw the exact opposite effect. They saw their mileage drop. Again, they claim to get about 30 miles per gallon on average, and they've dropped to 26, which again is in the same zone as what I'm experiencing. The biggest difference is they're coming from the stock bypass valve, and again, this holds boost a lot better. So my belief is the fact that they're just actually gaining probably power that they were losing from the rubber diaphragm possibly leaking out, because they possibly have a better air fuel mixture going into the combustion chambers. And of course, when you're on boost, especially if you're heavily on it, you're gonna lose a little bit of mileage because you need more fuel to compensate for more air. So again, do with that information what you will. It seems consistent across both dual clutch and stick shift. You will have a pretty decent fuel economy range, but a lot more usable power than with a stock valve, and from my experience, even the Turbo XS model that I had prior. Again, like I said, it might just be my bad luck, but do with that information what you will. The last takeaway that I'm going to leave you guys with that I really personally like is, I already mentioned the diversity of the valve, and honestly that's really where it shines. The fact that this valve allows you to do so much with it just out of the box without having to buy extra will definitely justify the price point. At the time of recording this video, just so you know, the valve runs about $270, not including shipping or taxes. I paid about $260 out the door with the promotion at the time that I purchased it. So it is definitely one of the pricier valves, but again, for those of you guys that want a lot of diversity, quality, and most importantly, you possibly don't want to cut a big hole on the top of your bumper, this is probably one of the best valves that you'll get. And again, while it might not add power, it definitely allows you to use the actual power that the engine is making. And I mention that because if you're on the stock bypass valve with that rubber diaphragm, you have a lot of likelihood of leaking air or losing some of the boost that's built up in the system, whereas something like this will hold on and give it to you throughout the power band for those of you guys that like to do some harder driving. So with that being said, hopefully this video was informative. I know that for some of you guys, you might feel like I talked quite a bit, but this is obviously my feedback for those of you guys interested in this particular functionality or the product itself. It's important to address these things. As always, guys, it's crazy times, so I know that us doing car stuff is probably what keeps us sane and just not going nuts. So please be safe out there. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys in the future. I know I missed out the KDM cruise this last weekend, and I apologize. With COVID, I myself am a little paranoid, but I hope to meet some of you guys out there very soon. And as always, thanks for all the love and support. See you guys in the next video.